Greetings. It is Sheena Denise, the founder of One People TO. It's been a long time since I have recorded something on this side. When I say this side, I have my own personal channel. I usually do astrology or Reiki or just a download of information that's coming through. Because One People TO has gone through its own evolution in the past couple of years. We also just celebrated our seventh anniversary. And in the past couple of years, we have shed some leaves and grown some new branches. And because of that, as we approach, we also right now mid eclipse season, or closer to the end of mid eclipse season. When I'm recording this, it's August the 25th. The eclipse that we just had was on August the 12th, Wednesday, August the 12th. That was at 20 degrees of Leo. The next eclipse that we have is on Friday early morning, 12:12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're based in Toronto or on the Eastern Seaboard, then this time would apply to you. I wanted to come on as well to talk a little bit about, yes, the astrology of it, but it's so much more than that. I feel like this era, I am a truth teller in my lifetime. And it has not been, I don't want to say, I don't want to call myself a whistleblower because that has its own connotation, oftentimes negative. But I can say I'm a truth teller. And it is not necessarily, it's not a comfortable thing, but I see, I notice. And I often am reprimanded or exiled for telling the truth. And I recognize that sometimes telling the truth can come with a level of directness that in today's society, especially now, we are being censored in so many ways that really almost compels you to speak in code. And I think it's important, especially in the era of um, neocolonialism, an enhanced level of racism. I'll get into that. But racism has always been a psychological tool. And as we move into further into the 2020s, late 2020s, and into the 2030s, of course, the extreme brutality of racism will continue to exist. However, there is also the psychological level of racism, the gaslighting, the microaggressions, the so many things. And that will continue to grow and continue to be an aspect of life, particularly for Black folks, but anywhere anti Blackness exists. So this includes the experiences of melanated folks, brown, indigenous people of color. And I invite folks to recognize that we are all, one, learning from each other, but particularly learning of the importance of the shared experiences and lived experiences of Black and indigenous peoples. The darker your skin tone is, regardless of your culture, nationality, background, there is an inherent anti-Blackness in the world. and an inherent misogyny. And so some of these topics I will touch on, but I also wanted to share a few things. Yeah, the astrology. So I'll touch on the eclipse that's coming up on Friday. I'll do that first. I'll also touch on the numerology of the times, of the numbers. We'll probably go into a little bit of the Sabian symbols. But I think first, I'd like to talk a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a casual conversation. I'd like to talk a little bit about the origin of One People and why I created this sanctuary space. Why I'm just starting to do a little bit of a smoke cleanse. Why it is so important for Black folks, Indigenous folks, folks of color to do this spiritual level of work. We are a spiritual sanctuary. And when I say spiritual, this is the universal spirituality that governs all of us, governs every single person, regardless of their religion, belief system, faith, practice. Which is why I love and learn practices that represent universal spirituality, such as astrology, such as numerology, such as building my connection with Mother Earth. Just clearing the space between us, clearing the space that is a portal, calling in the protection of my own angels, ancestors, spirit guides, and higher selves for their love, guidance, and protection. Only pure truth, God essence is allowed in this space. Anything that is not of God essence, beauty, power, love, is not permitted here, is not allowed here, and is invited to remove themselves before they are exercised. So before we get into the astrology and the updates around One People TO and a little bit of an essay read from something I wrote 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, actually, is the purpose of One People TO and the need for a sanctuary. I have also been, I'll just maybe speak to a lead into this, is that in the past couple of months, well, in the last year, I exited my employer of over a decade. And it's a complicated situation. I won't get too far into it here. But I've been sharing in that and journeying through my entrepreneurship journey, in full entrepreneurship, whatever that means. I've been sharing more of my lived experience and personal story, which sometimes in a professional sense, we're not really encouraged to share the context of who we are in a full spectrum way and why we do what we do, why we are who we are. And I was invited in the sharing of what I do and who I am, to own my story. And I did the recording. It was a 5 minute. It was a request, just a free share, with this Black woman who has built her own platform Also an Aquarius. I'm Aquarius. I think that's an important note for me to make. And she actually came back to say, like, this is not, she didn't say this, but this is not true. This is not transparent enough. I need more. And I replied to say, like, okay, I get it. No problem. I thought I was being open. And I recognize in order for me to go to the next level of my truth journey, my healing journey, because I mean, we're always healing, it's never over. I mean, I'm not actively feeling like I need to pursue, just need to plug in my computer here, like I need to actively pursue the depths of what I did in the past. Um, but we're always learning and evolving and growing and making different, better choices. Good, better, best, as my grams would say. So the foundation of One People TO, we opened, as I mentioned, we just celebrated our 7th anniversary. So we opened in July of 2019. I found this space in May of 2019, Taurus season, which has a fixed sign, Aquarius. I love a Taurus energy. It's grounding for me. It's slow, it's sensual, it's comforting, it's nourishing. It helps me to be in a reflective space. My grandmother is a Taurus. My landlord is a Taurus. Um, there is a sense of truthfulness from Taurus people and Taurus energy that I really love and appreciate. And so when I started to pursue this idea of finding a sanctuary, a spiritual sanctuary, it was because I had been through this evolution of a relationship disintegration, I like to call it, with someone that I thought would be a life partner. And at the time it was a boohoo, really, and not because I to be honest, I wasn't expecting it to turn into a relationship. And as much as I think as sometimes, and this is the part where we're going to come to a little bit of conversation around truth, transparency, directness, honesty, um, is that we can be honest and also not be transparent. And it can feel like maybe lies about mission or gaslighting. And so I ended up exiting that relationship, and not because I wanted to. I really, I mean, we ended up living together for a year, and I found out almost as soon as we moved in. Within 3 months, I found out the depths of depravity of this person, and I mean spiritual depravity, you know. And me being who I am and what I do, I was having a lot of downloads and information and dreams, and I would share my dreams with this person. And rather than negate what I was saying or dreaming or conjuring, they would ask questions and get curious. I think maybe out of disbelief that I actually was so clear that I couldn't even believe myself. Definitely, a lot of the grief around the ending of the relationship was how much I didn't believe, even though I knew and I was receiving all of the information I needed to receive, even if it wasn't from this person. Spirit was giving me all the information through songs, through numbers, through messages, through external people. And it got to the point where I just couldn't ignore it anymore, or I would just devalue myself. And I recognized that this relationship was a reflection of the foundational relationships in my life. So while I love my parents deeply, deeply, I think almost all children do, even if they have been in experiences of emotional neglect or abuse. And while, of course, I grew up in an immigrant household and in an environment that was not wholly healthy, lots of yelling, lots of arguing, lots of disputes over money and actual overturned tables and threats and that sort of stuff. Nothing physical had ever actually happened until we had a family member who was 13 years older than me immigrate from my home country. And when they were 16, and so I would have been 3. And within 3 years, they started to molest me. And that went on for a few years um, until I think it got to the point for them where I think they got scared that I would start to say something, which I never did because, in the Caribbean culture, which is my culture, particularly Jamaican culture, um, it's brushed under the rug. We don't talk about it. Even if you tell someone, it's like, okay, you told me, don't worry about it now. And that's why I minimized it. I didn't tell anyone. I tried to, I think, forget about it or pretend or think like, yeah, maybe gaslight myself into saying it wasn't that important or it didn't really happen. It didn't happen in this way, so at least that's okay. Um, anyway, fast forward a few years later, I certainly didn't know it, but had internalized this secret and the sickness, the silence of sickness. And that started to show up as self harm through cutting and just self destructive behavior, and which I started to get in trouble for from my parents. And of course, at that time, this is the mid 90s. This is not an era where your parents, particularly your Caribbean parents, immigrant parents, are asking, um, like what happened? Why is this happening? It certainly wasn't an environment where I felt comfortable to tell the truth. Anger was often forbidden or looked down upon, as was sadness or fear, um, even sometimes happiness. So I learned to process my emotions, my anger, my sadness through self harm and through self support in whichever ways I could find. So this also turned into smoking cigarettes at 13 years old, which is around this time I started self harming, which was around 12. Um, Smoking cigarettes turned into smoking cannabis. Um, and then promiscuity. So finding acceptance in the arms of boys and or men who paid me attention. Um, and there's nothing that I regret about it, you know. I'm thankful that I have come out clear and clean and sovereign from as sovereign as I can be. And I say this to say, like, I don't have any STDs or any contracted diseases or anything like that. So I feel really blessed and grateful. Um, and it could have been much worse, much different. I'd never had any severe addictions or anything like that. Coffee and weed, that's it. So I do really, I say that in jest, but I recognized the gravity of the situation that it could have been. Many times I wanted to run away. One time I did, but that, you know, in the environment that I grew up, that wasn't really a situation to be fearful of, at least from my perspective. I ran to a friend's house. Anyway, I say all of this to say, oftentimes, and what I've learned in through my own education, my formal education, my lived experience education, particularly as it relates to trauma, is that oftentimes, yes, the trauma itself is deeply impactful and has longitudinal effects, long range, long lasting effects. It is more so, however, and I know Gabor Mate often speaks about this as well. Um, it is oftentimes not just the actual incident that happens, it is how you are held in the aftermath of that incident. And so, as I mentioned, I didn't share about this experience for probably 18 years, about that time. Well, around the time from the time that I became consciously aware of the impact and started to self harm to process the emotion of it. And then it took about 18 years, which, if we know from an astrology standpoint, that is the switch of the nodes. And when I was around 30, I ended up having a conversation with my sister. Because she had a similar experience with this person, and which I've talked about on the spiritual therapy series with her. So if that's not something, maybe I can put a little link and you can check it out. That was one of the first videos that we ever did on this platform, or that I ever did on this platform. And it's been something that I haven't talked about recently because, for a variety of reasons, it's triggering. It's triggering. I mean, I've done a lot of work, particularly in the last 7 years, but even before that. But it can be triggering for people that are managing their own experiences as well. Also, it's interesting when I think about the timing of the Epstein case and his alleged death in 2019, and creating a space for myself, but others as well, who may be needing a sanctuary from whatever it is that they're experiencing, to hold themselves, to learn how to hold themselves, to teach themselves how to navigate whatever it is that they've experienced, to be able to transform it, to decolonize their experience, to own it, and to place the shame where it belongs. And so a lot of this conversation for me around opening this sanctuary and really holding on to it through the pandemic, because it has not been easy. It has been far from easy, far from easy. But the need for the sanctuary for me and for others is clear. It is clear to me. And so 7 years later, 2026, now as we move into this eclipse season and the nodes changing, the North Node now in Aquarius and the South Node in Leo, I think it's important for me to share and to truth tell even further about aspects of leadership that I have navigated, not personally, but under hierarchical leadership, which is why I'm so adamant to lead this sanctuary from a place that is non-hierarchical, which is a learning process for myself and for others. It's an opportunity to invite folks to step into their own power without minimizing someone else's power, someone else's experience. And so, a critical part of my healing is to share more about this experience, but also to tell the truth about environment, situations, lived experiences where I have been violated, whether the violation is a emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, or sexual act. The violation is still a violation. And so the violation that I have been experiencing most recently has been around the denial and or dismissal. Because sometimes it's not a denial, it is, I hear what you're saying, and that's not important to me. I am going to do what's important to me. And I say this because, back to the Epstein case and this era of Trump, um, there is this outright denial and or dismissal of the impacts of being violated. And this is not just from men, but it is a patriarchal mindset to minimize, dismiss harm, to minimize and dismiss harm. And so I experienced this need to tell the truth, to be transparent around why the sanctuary exists. And it is because I navigate a relationship, particularly with my mother and on my maternal line, because my mother experienced this with her mother, and my grandmother experienced this with her mother, is a, if not an outright denial, then a dismissal of being harmed emotionally and sexually violated with this um, with this sentiment that I've been through it, you can get through it, and we don't need to talk about it, and we need to forgive and forget. And forgiving often means allowing the person who has done the harm to insert themselves into an environment where I exist without having to atone for their behavior. And so ultimately, my parents actively manage a relationship. Um, Particularly, my mother actively engages in a relationship with this person who um, really refuses to atone and acknowledge harm, but insists on inserting themselves into um, environments where they know that I will be. They visit family members that of mine that they have adopted because they also know them well, and you could say grew up with them, even though they aren't necessarily blood family, and we know chosen family and different types of families. And yet, there is an active dismissal of the harm that this person has caused, whether on their part or on the part of my parents. And so this person is connected on my dad's side, and he is actively more disinterested of maintaining a relationship with this person than my mother is. So I find it very curious for lack of a better word, um, to her adherence to maintaining this relationship. And of course, I have a deep love for her. I have a deep understanding. and a forgiveness, which is why I um, attempt to engage in repair. And so, something that I have learned through this particular experience, but also how it has replicated itself in personal relationships, in romantic relationships, in friendships, in relationships with employers, is noticing the red flags of either for myself of dismissing my anger, my fear, my sadness, all of those emotions that I was not permitted to fully experience as a child. Now I fully experience them as an adult and need spaciousness, need a sanctuary to be that full spectrum self. And yes, I could most actively go no contact with my parents. Although the reason that I have not is because we can, we do, and not all the time, but pretty actively, I engage with them in what it means to atone for their behavior. So I speak about this a lot when we see things on TV about whether it's the Epstein case or hockey players that are charged with sexual assault, any opportunity for me to share the impact of this long range experience. And sometimes it will end up in an argument, and I don't really care. Because if they want me in their lives, then we will engage in these conversations. And if they don't, then that is my cue and sign to create distance and or exit, which I have done before and have no issue doing again. And that is why this sanctuary, One People TO, is so critical, not just for myself, because I know I am, as the motto is, I am out of one, many people, out of many, one people, but out of one experience, I also represent many lived experiences. And in this sanctuary, it is a space to be strengthened, to strengthen yourself, to be held, if not by physical people in this space, then to be held by the sanctuary, to be held by the energy, to be held by yourself. And this space allows that, invites that. And this is why I think it is so critical and important that everyone chooses the way in which they heal, the way in which they address the harm, the pains that have been done to them. It, from a trauma informed perspective and vantage point, the option of choice, the opportunity to say, this is how I want things to go now. This is how I want my body to be touched. This is how I want to be spoken to. These are the questions I want to be asked. And to be able to have a say in your experience going forward is sovereignty, sovereignty returned, agency reignited, personal power bestowed. I'm not sure how long I've gone. I should have taken note. but I do want to just pause. Let me do that. Unpause. I had to refill my coffee. Um, and I say all of this to say having a sanctuary helps you to be resourced, to feel resourced, to resource yourself. Um, so many, so many things that are key to living the life that you deserve, that you want, and not letting the trauma create the narrative. Your body knows when you're being honest, when you're being honest to yourself, when you are dismissing yourself because others have dismissed you. And I won't be letting that happen for myself. And I hope in this next 18 months, in this era of North Node in Aquarius, South Node in Leo, I see the rise of the people. There has been the rise, but I think a lot of people have felt scared, like they can't do it themselves, nor should they be doing it themselves, right? So I feel like maybe I will keep this video short and I will put the astrology into another video. But this is why I open One People to You. This is why I open this sanctuary, this third space, this place, spiritual placemaking haven, this beautiful sanctuary of, move this around so you can see. Easel. It's this beautiful space that is One People to You that I am so proud of. And I say all of that to say events are coming back. We've been on a hiatus from events because, as I mentioned, in these last 2 years, yeah, I personally, actually, health wise, personally has been a major thing to navigate. Also, the health of family who that I've been supporting with caregiving, and also wanting to recalibrate how the business has grown because it grew in a way, and I was just trying to keep things together. Honestly, I have no qualms to say that. And I feel really proud that I have been able to do that. And now we've been doing backtracking, documenting the processes that we're now going to implement with events starting in September. And yeah, I'm really excited. Excuse me. I'm really excited to share how things are going to continue to unfold and have the opportunity for some longer form content with some of the incubator folks and to share some other updates as they launch. This is also an invitation if you're unaware of the Wealth Mindset program. That is a virtual program for Black women to investigate and to really integrate their health with their wealth and to see the results in their bank account, but also in their ability to resource themselves, whether it's in regards to health or any other needs that they may have. And being able to do this in community and with opportunities to exchange in a circular economy savings program. Susu Bardna There are different names from different cultures, but this is something that participants can be a part of and take advantage of if they are participants. So I would love for you to join. If you are of that demographic, you can find more information at onepeopleto.ca/philanthropy. And yeah, I think this is good. So thank you so much for this time. Thank you for spending some time with me. And I will, yes, rather than share on my personal page, I will share with you a little bit about the astrology of this eclipse season beyond the truth and transparency and sharing more of your identity and your intersections and the nuances and the idiosyncrasies that make you who you are, so then you can find the groups and the communities and the new connections that are going to help you to step into your shine even more. But we need people to be telling the truth, and not from a harsh perspective, from delivery, but from a modicum of with a modicum of not just decorum, but respect for self and respect for another, and not pretending to ignore not just protocol, but humanity. God is so good. Spirit is so good. Sending you all the love. Why am I wearing a sweater? And it's August, but it's been chilly. So it's Canada for you. Talk to you soon. Ciao.